I would have to say that the most powerful part of my involvement in the work that we've been doing here at Southern Okanagan Secondary is the collaboration that we're developing across our staff. We've started building teams of teachers that are co-creating programs. They're co-creating lessons and units for different classes, and the practice of cross-curricular learning for our students is really growing. So that's probably the most powerful part for us.
Professional learning that's been important in the journey has just been, I think, the opportunity to have time to collaborate. So our inquiry days and Pro-D days have been really important. I think for me, the visit to High Tech High last year was really important, just to see how somebody else does it, and I got a lot of inspiration from that trip. So I think if there's one thing I can point to, that kind of started it, and then the opportunity to collaborate through inquiry after that has been what's kept it going.
I believe that the most important aspect of what we've been doing here at Southern Okanagan Secondary is the support that we've been provided with. So we have been involved in the Spirals of Inquiry. As a school, we have staff groups where we work on inquiry questions, and we use those as part of our professional growth plans as well throughout the year. And this year we are actually making a concerted effort to make sure that inquiry is making its way into our students' learning. And so an aspect of our inquiry for this year is making sure that there is action being taken in the classroom so that the students can start to embrace or struggle with the whole process of inquiry and the powerful aspect of learning that can have.
The opportunities to go outside of our district and see how other schools do things. Our trip to High Tech High last year had a huge influence on my understanding of what inquiry learning and collaboration could truly mean. And I also think our deeper learning community last year provided an opportunity for us to see what other schools were doing and get inspiration from our colleagues. Also, the Take a Risk grants, those have been really cool over the last couple of years, given me the opportunity to do a lot of things that I wouldn't normally have been able to do in my class.
And I think, without a doubt, one of the most powerful things that has been important for us is the fact that our principal, vice principal, and our superintendent have been really, really supportive of the whole process, and understanding that a lot of the work that we do is taking risks and not worrying if everything doesn't work out perfectly, but the idea that we're failing forward and learning from everything that we're doing.
Being able to work with other teachers, that's been a fun experience for me. Creating new ideas, I enjoy that. I love teaching and I like creating new ideas. So that experience is new for me. One thing that has been important for me is bringing First Nation culture into my math classes. Right now there's a big impetus for going forward with bringing First Nation culture and making it authentic. So right now in my math textbook there'll be questions about how tall is the totem pole, if you sell 10 bannocks for $1 each, how much would that be? But I'm looking to bring the First Nation culture and making it authentic. So this example here, it's still not the real totem pole, but at the same time I can address what the history of the totem pole is. So we had the First Nation support worker come in, talk about totem poles. When I did a project at Math 9, we talked about the importance of circles and the importance of sweat lodge and aspects of the First Nation culture that naturally came into it because of the math/First Nation and then the art piece that all tied in together.
So a lot of what I do is cross-curricular, so I bring in the Aboriginal perspectives from the Okanagan into a lot of the classrooms, and bringing in First Nations knowledge, practicing the First Nations principles of learning. So some of the things that I do is I've gone into our English classes here and shared our chaptique. So those are our legends and our stories. And so we practice by all the traditions. We sit in a circle, so we're all equal, and we share the chaptique. And then after, we review what lessons we got out of the story, what the main points were. And then also, because they're still in English class, some of them have created their own legends that they share with the class, or they've written essays about the lessons that they've got out of the legends. In English and drama, they've also reenacted some of the legends into plays. I've also brought in Aboriginal perspectives into some of the math classes. So although we are Okanagan, we took a look at coastal First Nations people's artwork. And so with their totem poles, we examined them and took a look at some of the symmetry that goes into their artwork and their rotational symmetry. And we tried to create that, and using the angles of those and they designed their own totem pole. And so each student in the class created a small portion of a totem pole, and at the end, when they were finished, they put them all together. And so that totem pole is on display.
So cross-curricular is just having two different courses kind of merged together, so it has different aspects involved in different classes that you usually wouldn't have in just a singular curricular course. So having the different learning styles combined makes it easier almost to learn, and it makes it more engaging for me especially. So I don't know, just learning about things that really interest me and then having two different courses crossed over makes it better.
I think that the fact that the students and the teachers are getting out on the land and they're doing cross-curricular learning, and that they're seeing learning in a new way, I think is the highlight for me. I'm sure that if you were to speak to teachers who are working directly with the students in the classes, they would have all sorts of feedback for you in terms of, highlights. But I think that for me as a helping teacher, it's been really great because you get to see them when they head out onto field trips that they're doing, and the excitement that they have, not only when they're leaving and climbing onto the bus, but also when they get back. And it's almost like it's two different groups of students, because they have the opportunity to learn in a new way, and they also have an opportunity to build a sense of community, and that seems to be a really important part.
The relationship with my students has been a lot different compared to normal classes that I teach, like math or woodshop, where I only see them maybe once or twice a day depending on what courses they have. Instead, I teach the same group of students every day for an entire semester, and having that relationship, I get to see students on a more personal level, and in a sense we become kind of a community or almost like a little family. And when that happens, I get to see kind of a different side of the students that I normally wouldn't see.
Getting to work with my colleagues on a deeper level has been a really powerful experience for me. And also it's kind of rejuvenated a lot of what I've been doing in my courses and just how I feel about teaching. So that's been a really powerful moment for me as well.
Well, we're very interactive with each other, and I feel like the relationship with our teachers now is a little more personal and somewhat more trusting, where compared to if I was in a regular class. We're very interactive with each other. We do a lot of group things, kind of. And even when we go on our field trips, there's always groups, and they always interact with one another, and it's very connected. I think because we get into more deeper topics and touchier situations, I find that I trust these teachers more so because of their new kind of connection with me as a student and so on.
Mm-hmm.
My relationship with colleagues, we're starting to work a lot more together as a group. So myself and the art teacher right now, for the last 2 years, we worked together on creating 2 projects. We got one more going on this semester. Between myself and students, it's created more group kind of setting, more project-based, I've found now with our new curriculum, It's more open, so I don't have to necessarily focus on content. I can play around with projects. Before we were limited, we were always worried about content, and now we can start playing around with different ideas and going into place where we can explore deeper, more meaningful projects.
It's definitely given us more insight in Aboriginal ways.
Yeah, for me, just having something to connect into English, like with kinesthetic learning, just using my hands and everything and being really visual about the art that I'm doing and then putting it into the English makes a big difference. Yeah, we're just able to go way deeper because we develop like a deeper relationship. Say like when we're doing sharing circles in English, we just are able to open up more and it really gives us more opportunities to share different things. So, just it's really connecting us and making it more real, I guess. So it's putting us in a place where we kind of see the world and the land around us, and then we're able to put it into our work and into our art, and it makes a big difference when we're working with passion because you can feel it.
Because we kind of get to learn more about the land, like bitterroot or spelum. Berries, we get to do the winter survival day, which we did last year, where we built shelters and fires out in the forest in the winter. And I think it's just kind of training us and teaching us to survive off what we can.
Okay. And how receptive do you think the students are to Aboriginal perspectives being brought into the program?
I find students are very receptive in terms of learning about Aboriginal content and tying it into what we do in the program. I would say students really find it more powerful when we can bring in guest speakers and tie it directly into what we're learning. For example, last year we had a number of elders come in and we learned about their stories in residential schools, and we got a kind of personal side of things. And when students could see that story being told by the person who experienced it themselves, they were able to get a direct connection to the story and kind of get a better appreciation of what they were learning and seeing that, okay, this is something that actually happened. It's not something they just read from a textbook, and they can apply it to and make it more relatable to themselves.
Well, with the different culture, with the indigenous culture that Mr. Baptiste has been talking to us about, stuff that I didn't know personally, made it more interesting to know more about them and what they did.
In terms of my teaching, it's definitely made me more excited about teaching math with projects in mind, and also it's gotten me excited to bring in First Nation culture into math, because my end result is also to make sure that First Nation students are proud of their culture. And right now, something is going on where their graduation rates are low, and maybe by me doing these projects might engage not just First Nation, but all cultures to be proud of their background. Because I remember when I was in high school, there was a social studies teacher that spoke to me about my culture, and I found that made me feel proud of my own culture, and I'm hoping I can do that back towards the students.
The inquired question for our project was, why is there such a negative propaganda around Islam religion?
And what did you two do for your creative piece?
We built a tent out of cloth in our home ec room, and we had posters all around. We had games and models we had brought in. Yeah, we also had a computer which we presented a slideshow which showed images from Islam religion. I found it a lot less stressful than having to do an exam.
Where you just sit down and write a test. This way you are actually learning in the environment. You get to show different ways of what you've learned.
Yeah,
And do you think you're more engaged in this type of study?
Yes, by far, yeah. I feel like we were more passionate about what we chose because we had the option to choose what we did, I guess.
Well, you've taken me out of robotics class and we were just working on doing our human robot challenge. So that's where one person gets to program and the other person has to do the program to get to a certain room in the school. It's interesting, it's a different way of learning, doing the challenges where you actually get to figure it out for yourself.
Okay, Thorsten, would you agree?
Basically not being told what to do.
Yeah.
You find your own way.
You learn at your own pace, basically.
Yeah.
It's not like, do this worksheet, do this, It's like, no, you just, if you're really interested in it, you look it up like outside of class or something and you just learn.
I think that's a good idea because it's like you're combining two different topics and like classes that wouldn't usually like go together, I feel like. And it's cool because I personally really like doing projects, and I think a lot of other people do too. It's better than just like bookwork and stuff. It gives you more intelligence on the subjects and stuff. I really think that's a cool idea.
I liked it because it gave because it showed how everything's more connected, because everything is connected, but when we're doing things in just the classes, it's all very divided. But when we go out and it's for both classes, everything was together, and this is how it all is working together and changing things. Well, we saw a bunch of stuff there. It was like, we didn't really go into a lot of detail on anything, which I think was good because we just got a broad look at a lot of things. So when we go to focus on like one topic for the inquiry project that we'll do later, we can narrow down on something we found interesting on the trip because we saw a lot of things.
Yeah, for like the biology aspect of it, we learned a lot of like different facts about all the organelles and like, let's say the aquarium. We learned a lot of different facts about the fishes and all that, and that was cool. And then for the socials, I guess we learned some stuff about the environmental part, and I thought that was like really cool to learn about that. All about there's the
impact that things have, aside from just like this is what's happening, and then stuff like such a progression. There's stuff that we don't know what's going to happen there, or all that stuff.
You learn more things, I feel like, when you're actually doing this instead of just in class, like learning about notes and
it's
stuff
easy
like
to
that.
forget things when you just write it down and then you push it away.
It's easier to understand something when you actually enjoy what you're learning about. Yeah.
Awesome. Mr. Toth is giving you challenges. Is that how the class is being run?
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of a couple other?
Well, we got the paper challenge at the beginning of the year.
I see smiles. What happened with the paper challenge?
You had like 10 sheets of paper, I think, and then you had 5 minutes to plan, 10 minutes to test, and 10 minutes to build it, and you had to build like the tallest tower that you could.
Were you successful?
Sort of. It kept falling over.
We weren't allowed to use like any adhesives or anything. Only scissors. That was the only thing we were allowed to use.
Yeah. And our brains, of course.
Yeah, and our beautiful minds.
The best part is that like at the beginning of class, like he doesn't really tell us to do anything. We just sit down and like we just do what we know what we have to do. And like somehow we just know what we're supposed to be doing, and we always get what we have to.
Well, like he gives us like a structure for the week of what we're going to be doing. Like say like sometime in the middle of the week we have to have something, and then by the end of the week we're doing something else.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so he doesn't really care how we get there.
Just as long as we get to the finish
As long as
line.
we get there, and if we need help getting there, he'll help us. Like it's really easy and fun to learn.
Well, it means that instead of him just writing out, hey, this is what we're going to be doing, he's kind of more like, hey, this is the basic premise on what we're going to do. You can try to freely figure it out on your own accord just to make it more interesting.
The fact that you can just kind of build and use your, what's the word I'm looking for?
Creativity?
Yeah, creativity to build your own robot.
Awesome. Dax?
Yeah, if you can just like kind of make whatever you want and even program it to do tasks so you don't even need to bat an eye at it. Just let it go and do its own thing. It's just awesome.
And you still learn stuff. And like if you need to know something, Toth's not always gonna just tell you what it is. so you just remember it and then like write it on a test or something, and then in like a week you just forget it. If you need to know something, you actually have to figure it out, and then like you know that forever. You know, it's cool.
Definitely our sharing circles, like Jesse said, the willingness of students to share such personal stories and just open themselves up has been a really amazing thing.
I mean, as an English teacher, you know, we always look for skills development, and that's a standard part of any English class. But one of the things that in my previous experience that kind of haven't seen as much of was the development of speaking skills, because kids are often anxious to share anything, and what we're seeing in this class is that the speaking skills are being developed in a very personal way, and you know, as the kids are they're dealing with topics that are meaningful to them and that affect their lives, so they're sharing with each other as they become more comfortable. We're in October now, and they're becoming much more comfortable working together, and so I think as we kind of continually share little bits of pieces, we reveal ourselves to each other in that sense. We become more comfortable sharing at a deeper level, and that's absolutely a highlight.
So I don't know if I see more engagement. I see a different kind of engagement, a more personal engagement to the content. Students are always pretty willing to do the projects that I ask them to do in my classes, mostly because they choose to be in my class. But I think the difference with this class is that students are connecting their art projects with experiences in their own lives, and that is something different from what I normally see in my regular art classes.
I find students are more engaged in this new type of program. Students find it's a lot nicer where the schedule is really flexible and they don't have to sit in a desk all day. And because like normal classes, like for example being a math teacher, after you teach for 15 minutes you start to lose kids. But when you have a class where there's a lot more movement and a lot more freedom, students kind of get more engaged in the activities that we do. And I notice more so with the students throughout the school, when you see them walking the halls, they seem happier and more excited to come to school compared to when you might see them before, where school just seems kind of like boring and it's just something they have to do. It's more something they feel like they want to be here.
I'd say definitely, because whereas before I used to give my teachers a ton of attitude, where now, especially in this class in particular, I tend to be a little more mindful about everything.
In a way that allows them to be actively participating in something has been really key, I think, from my position anyways, looking at it. They have a better sense of commitment and follow through. One of the main reasons that we developed the EPIC program was for student engagement, and for those students who in a traditional classroom weren't finding the success. They're all very, very capable, and so narrowing down and figuring out what it was that we could offer those students to help them sort of reach their potential. And I think that through these cross-curricular programs we're really able to find that. And the really cool thing about our programs is that they aren't targeting a really narrow group of students. For the programs, it's students who need to take on their learning in a different way, or it's students who just sitting in a traditional classroom doesn't work for them, and they need to be able to go out onto the land and to experience learning that way. And we have students who struggle in traditional classrooms, but we've also had students who excel in all learning situations, and so it was just an opportunity for them to be able to learn something in a new way.
The opportunity to collaborate with staff is super exciting. Every time that I have an opportunity to do a cross-curricular project with another teacher, there's so much excitement in creating that assignment that I find that to be really rejuvenating and exciting, and I really enjoy that process a lot.
I guess advice that I could give to people who are just starting is to understand that it's not easy. There's a lot of challenges, and you need to be willing to work your way through those challenges, but the end result is absolutely worth it. And I can't imagine working in an environment where inquiry and cross-curricular learning is not a central theme.